Hi, this is Kaleah, and today we're going to continue on the twin flame narcissist journey by talking about really dispelling this myth that there is one ideally suited person to be with you. And this will really help you to look at your own patterns of idealization and how you can change this in order to have a healthier, happier relationship in the future. And also to recover beyond that narcissistic relationship that you may still be hooked into in some way by this fantasy. Even if you're not in that physical relationship, you may still be hooked in through a twin flame type fantasy, kind of waiting for that person to get it together, to figure it out, to come back, whatever it is that you might be waiting for that hooks you in, or simply that trauma bond, that feeling so bonded and connected to that person through trauma. And I want to focus today on the fairy tale romance. The fairy tale romance is something that we get involved in very early in our life as we are read these beautiful fairy tales that are really romantic and exciting, and they've given us this idea, or they birth in us, in our unconscious and our subconscious, this idea that there's going to be someone who comes into our lives with the promise of happily ever after. And that really is the message of the fairy tale romance, that we meet somebody, we recognize them as the one that we're ideally suited to be with, we fall in love with that person, and then there is the promise of happily ever after that usually in romantic comedies that we're fed when we're adults. We go from these childhood stories of romance, the Cinderella, the Snow White, the Sleeping Beauties, those kinds of fairy tale romances, to the adult romantic comedies, which are based on the same idea, that there is one person that is over and above all people in our lives, and if we could just be with that one person, it will bring to us the fulfillment of our dream of love, our dream of romance, and the promise of happily ever after. But if you've been connected to real life, which we all have to do sooner or later, you recognize that the wedding is not the end. It's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of the story. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you really get to know who somebody is. And we can also look around and look at the divorce rates. There's a lot of people that would not say that they had a happily ever after story. In fact, a lot of the stories are quite nightmarish, especially if you've been involved with somebody who is narcissistic or sociopathic. It's quite the nightmarish story, because this person swoops into your life with wine and roses and promises of love. And there is a bond that is formed not only from being wowed, from the wow factor of this person sweeping in with all these romantic gestures, but there's also an unconscious or subconscious recognition of the woundedness in that other person that you recognize because of your own degree of woundedness. So there's a similar childhood wound that attracts us in subconsciously because it's familiar, and we tend to migrate towards the familiar because it's what we experience in our family. So if it feels anywhere similar to the dynamic you had in your family, it's going to be comfortable in maybe a very uncomfortable way as it progresses. But in the beginning, it might feel like an old slipper that's so comfortable and familiar to you that you feel that you could just sink in and be in this feeling for all eternity. You'll be fine with this. And so we don't often recognize that the bonds that are forming in these type of relationships are actually trauma bonds. You might hear from this other person, this narcissistic person, which is really common, about all the woes of the past, the abuse from childhood, the continued abuse from their relationships, especially that last one, that last ex is usually, the worst of the worst, or maybe the one before that. But you might get the feeling from that person that they've never really been loved, and that they've just been done wrong in their life. And you feel that you could be the one to finally give them what they need, finally give them what they want, finally bring to them that love that they never had, because you're feeling that love. It's like, oh, that poor person never was loved. I'm the one who can show them the love they never had, and they'll be forever grateful for all the love that I give them. And then they will give me that love back, and it will fulfill all my unmet needs, and I will have what I want. So there's this kind of illusionary promise that if you give this person the love that they kind of felt like they never got, that's what they tell you, that they never got that love, then you're set up to give. You're really set up to give all your stores of love to this person, really with the expectation that they will be so grateful and so thankful for your love that they will cherish you, they will give that love back to you, and once again be grateful. But what we notice going forward in these kinds of relationships is really quite the opposite. For one, it is a story that they have in their own head that their ex didn't love them or was abusive to them. It's a projection. So as you know, narcissists typically project on to the person they're with their own shadow. So what is within their shadow, they project out. And we all do that to some extent. So if we don't have any familiarity with what's in our shadow, then we are going to likely project that out if we can't own it. And that's what the narcissist does. He projects his shadow, or she projects her shadow on to the person that he or she is closest to, and then ends up attacking that person, believing that person is the problem, when really what they're doing is projecting. So that person could be very loving towards them and very caring towards them, but they can't see it because they're projecting their own dark side onto that person and demonizing them and devaluing them for what is actually within themselves that they can't see or don't want to see. And that's really what happens with these narcissistic relationships. What those of us that get involved with narcissists, we typically have some codependency going on. And that codependency is what leads us to that doorway of, if I give this person in my life all of my love and all of my warmth and acceptance, and I overlook some of their bad behaviors and I just keep loving them, then I'm going to get what I need. I'm going to get my void filled. I'm going to have my happily ever after. And that's the fairy tale. That's the illusion. That's not the way it works. The way it really works is when we can recognize that each one of us have to face our own dragon. We have to face our shadow. We have to face that which is within us. And all of our relationships, every relationship, even the narcissistic ones, mirror to us something that is unhealed within us. And that's where our wounds are triggered. And I'm not saying that you're not being abused or neglected or cheated on or whatever's happening. That stuff happens definitely with the narcissistic relationships. However, it's still mirroring in us maybe our own insecurities, maybe our own feelings of worthlessness, maybe our feeling desperate on some level to be loved, to be cared for attention, for affection. I hear a lot of my clients say, I got so much attention from that person in the beginning, and I never had that kind of attention in my life, and it felt so good to have attention. And we all need attention. I mean, children thrive with attention. They need somebody to recognize that they're there, that they're human, that they're beautiful, that they're lovable. And so we all need that attention, but if we grow up not getting that attention, it sets us up with another kind of attention deficit. You know, we are hungry for attention from people out there, especially that person that is supposed to be the beloved. We really want and need that attention. So when we're working on our inner realm, we have to look at our own needs for attention, and we have to be able to really give ourselves the attention we need. And not saying that you still don't desire it from people outside of yourself, but you've got to be able to tend to your own needs as an adult. And you've got to be able to know what it is that you need as an adult. You know, what do I need? Do I need to feel worthy? Do I need to feel loved? Do I need to feel valuable? All of the above. These are the areas that you've got to work on. And the more that you can work on getting those needs met within yourself, the less you're going to be seeking to get these needs met from other people, especially a narcissistic person who absolutely cannot meet those needs. And so as we go deeper into these relationships with narcissists, we've got to recognize that these are toxic and unhealthy relationships. They're not our happily ever after. They're not our twin flame. They're not a soulmate. The only way I would say that they are a twin flame is if you redefine what a twin flame is. If a twin flame is someone who shows you what you need to heal in yourself on the greatest level, that shines the brightest light on what remains unhealed within yourself, then yes, absolutely. But it's short-lived. It is a in and out kind of situation. Once that narcissist is out of your life, it's best to let them keep going, because they're only ever going to bring to you pain, sorrow, suffering, neglect, abuse, and feelings of frustration, anxiety, and the list goes on. These are not healthy relationships. And whenever you're in a relationship where your focus is on that person most of the time, it's unhealthy. Whenever there's obsession, compulsions, things like that in a relationship, it's unhealthy. So you've got to recognize in yourself where you might be, kind of obsessed and hyper-focused on that person and what they're doing, and trying to maybe control, which is a codependent behavior, to try to control their behavior and get another outcome, to try to get them into therapy, to try to fix them, to heal them, to get them to see what they have with you, to get them to value you. These kinds of things keep us outer focused and not inner focused, when we need to be focusing more on, why do I need this? Why do I need this from that person who can't give it to me? And how can I better serve my own needs? How can I better take care of my own needs for love, for attention, for affection, whatever it is that you need to be valued, to be seen as good. You know, the thing about narcissistic relationships is, oh yeah, they see us as good in the beginning. We're not only good, we are the best. We are up on a pedestal. We are idealized. And that can be very flattering for someone who's never really gotten that kind of attention in their lives. That attention is just very flattering. It feels very good, but it's short-lived. Because once that shadow comes up in the narcissist, it's all over for you. Because then, when it looks like it's starting to settle into a normal, comfortable relationship, which is where you think you're going, that's where the promise is, then things begin to change really quickly, because that vulnerability is unearthed in the narcissist, and he can't really sustain it. He can't sustain those healthy relationships, or she can't sustain it. So then there's the shadow comes up. The fears, the insecurities, everything that is in the shadow of the narcissist that narcissistic person has probably never looked at. So that shadow is really big. It's much bigger than the average person that's always kind of looking at themselves and growing. And we may still have a long way to go with our growing, but if you've been somebody that's looked into your shadow at all in your lifetime and looked at some of your own issues and worked with some of your own issues, what happens is that shadow, you bring more of it to light, so there's less of it there. And by bringing things that are in the shadow to light, you become enlightened. You become more enlightened. The more of that shadow that you bring to light, the more enlightened you are. So you have to understand that these narcissists never look into their shadow because they are masters at projection. So they're projecting their shadow onto you, and then they are punishing you for their shadow. And it has nothing to do with you. It really doesn't. It has nothing to do with you. They're completely having a relationship with their own shadow. So if you look at the mythology of Narcissist, Narcissus is the name of that mythological character who looks into the pool of water and he sees his own reflection. Well, think of that reflection that he's seeing as his own shadow. So, that part of him that's desperate for love gets projected onto you as the idealized partner in the beginning. But then when you fall short in some way, and once again, this is not your fault, it's just that narcissistic person trying to get a need met from outside of himself too. He's trying to get you to take care of him and to take care of all of his needs and never having to look at himself or herself. So that shadow is always being projected outward onto you, and you're getting blamed for it. You're getting devalued for it. You're getting abused for it. And this has nothing to do with you. So you have to remember this, that projection of the shadow onto you has nothing to do with you. The person that was in relationship with the narcissist before you got that same projection. And the person that's in the relationship after you gets that same projection. So we're all having a relationship with the same character who projects his or her shadow onto us and then tries to make us pay for it, tries to hold us accountable for what's going on inside of them. And they're so clueless about what's going on inside of them that they're kind of oblivious to what's going on. But you're sitting back there going, what the heck, what's going on? This is crazy. I feel crazy. And the result is crazy. And that's why we can't fix it. We can't heal it. We can't rehabilitate it in the other. Our work is not to fix the other person. It's to come back home to ourselves and look at what is it within ourselves that needs to be healed. Is it our tendency to project a fantasy onto the other person, an idealized fantasy? Is it being stuck in fairy tale romance land? Is it being stuck in this idea that this person is your twin flame and there's no other for you? These are the things we have to deal with within ourselves, our own sense of unworthiness, our own feelings that we're unlovable. We've got to heal this before we will ever truly find love, because love out there is a reflection of what's going on in here. So if you drew the narcissist in, it was to shine a really big light, perhaps on your own sense of unworthiness or your own feelings of being unlovable. And then they get really exaggerated. So by the end of these relationships, you've been so beaten up, and this idea that you're unlovable and unworthy has been shoved down your throat so much that it's very exaggerated. It's very magnetized in you and it feels overwhelming. So you have to understand when you're coming out of these relationships that there is a magnetized sense of unworthiness and unlovability that you've got to work with, and realize that you do have some of that to heal, but the magnitude is more of an illusion as well. It's been magnetized at such a level that it feels overwhelming. So in time, that magnetization will go down. You'll feel it less and less. And at the same time, if you're building your own sense of self-worth, you're going to feel stronger and stronger. and really start to love yourself. And when you really come from a place of self-love, then you can really handle that love coming from somebody else in a different way. It won't feel so vulnerable and scary to you. And when something feels vulnerable and scary to us, we tend to want to push it away. So a lot of people I work with push away healthy love in favor of unhealthy love because of their own vulnerability, that they feel vulnerable to somebody that can actually love them. So they're actually going to be more attracted to somebody who doesn't or is incapable of loving them, because there's less raw vulnerability there. And, it's like if somebody is afraid of intimacy and you've got some fear of intimacy because of your own vulnerability, then somebody that is afraid of intimacy is going to be a good match for you to show you your own fear of intimacy. So as you become more comfortable with that love, that self-love within yourself, and you can be more intimate with the inner realm within yourself, then you're going to be able to handle that love coming from somebody else. And it won't feel anything like the love with the narcissist. And a lot of people are concerned about that. They're like, oh, I'm never going to feel that kind of connection again. And what we have to learn to say is, good, that's great, that's awesome. And I know it felt really heady and exciting and powerful at the time, but it wasn't healthy. It was a trauma bond. It was toxic, and you didn't see it. That obsession, that hyper focus that you felt in the beginning wasn't healthy for you. So you need to learn to be more relaxed about your relationships. Have relationships where you can feel more relaxed, where you're not hyper focused on that person. You're continuing to live your life. And sure, you might be excited about meeting this person and excited to spend time with them and excited about the budding relationship and the potential there, but you still spend time with your friends. You still go to work. You still work on your hobbies or your projects or whatever you have going on. You don't throw it all away to be hyper focused on this one person, which tends to happen in these more obsessive toxic relationships as we just disappear into them. We lose ourselves in them, and we let go of those important parts of our life. So if our life is a pie and we have all these pieces of the pie, we're giving the whole pie to an unhealthy relationship. Where a healthy relationship, you're only giving a piece of that pie to a prospective partner. And you're also giving it the time and the space to grow. So once again, we're not falling in love, we're growing in love. And that's where you really start to grow fond of somebody, where you really start to get to know them on a slower basis. That doesn't happen with a narcissist, because a narcissist is not comfortable with slow budding relationships. They want that all or nothing. They have that all or nothing quality. So they come in on that, on that white horse, so to speak, swoop in, sweep you off your feet, and get you sucked into that relationship very rapidly before you even know what hit you. So it's time to take that step back and to really focus on healing your own unresolved wounds, unhealed wounds, so that you can have a happy, healthy relationship, maybe a soulmate relationship with somebody that you really resonate with and you feel good with, in which there are many, there's not one, that you can really have a happier, healthy relationship in the future. There's no such thing as happily ever after. We know that. Relationships are work, but the work is mostly here. So I hope this has been helpful for you, and if you like this content that I'm bringing, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and help my budding channel to be found. Thank you so much for your love and attention to these videos, and I'll see you in the next video.